So President Trump is now up to 151 executive orders. It can be really difficult to keep up with all of them. We're trying our best. The most recent one tackles drug prices, something many presidents have tried to do in the past. We got Executive Order 14297. It says the Secretary of Health and Human Services shall communicate most favored nation price targets to pharmaceutical manufacturers to bring prices for American patients in line with comparably developed nations. I feel like that is a lot wordier than it needs to be. What it really means is Trump wants to make deals to lower drug prices, or at least to make them equal to the prices we can see other countries paying. There are all kinds of articles about how much we pay for drugs right now, think pieces about how to bring those prices down, and commentaries on whether or not the Trump plan will actually work. If you're interested in that coverage, there's a ton of it out there. But for now, we're not really focusing on that piece of this executive order. Instead, we're going to focus on a feature of this order that seems to pop up in many of the president's 151 executive orders: deadlines. For instance, this order for lowering drug prices calls for a plan to be ready within 30 days. That's a deadline of June 11th. And like I said, many presidents have tried to lower drug prices in the past, and they spent a lot longer than 30 days working on a plan. But is Trump just way more efficient than them? Maybe. Let's take a look at how deadlines on some of his other executive orders have played out so far. Order up! Let's start with one of the OGs, one of those day one executive orders. I'm talking about the Gulf of America and Mount McKinley Executive Order 14172. This gave the Department of Interior 30 days to rename the mountain and the Gulf, and they got it done in 4 days. If you go to the USGS, those names are in there. And just last week, the House voted on a bill codifying this order into law. The Senate will take it up next. So there you have it. Deadline set, deadline met. Next up, paper straws. Yes, seriously, there's an executive order targeting paper straws. Order 14208 called for a strategy to end the use of paper straws by March 27th, and they were close. The strategy came out on March 28th. It singles out each federal agency suggesting ways to avoid paper straws. Basically, just buy plastic straws is the remedy here. Next up, TikTok. You remember when Congress banned it, only for it to come back for 8 hours after going offline? Well, that was thanks to an executive order 14166. It delayed enforcement of that ban for 75 days. But as that deadline got closer, the president then passed another executive order, literally titled Extending the TikTok Enforcement Delay. That new deadline is June 19th. But President Trump told NBC News that if an American company still has not made a deal to buy TikTok, he's going to extend that deadline once again.
TikTok is it's very interesting, but it'll be protected. It'll be very strongly protected. But if it needs an extension, I would be willing to give it an extension. It might not need it.
So this deadline doesn't seem like much of a deadline. In this case, it appears to be pretty fluid. Next up, an order that impacts our area directly, giving federal recognition to the Lumbee tribe. The deadline for this was a report on it by April 23rd. We checked. We haven't seen that report yet, but the Lumbee tribe says something is in the works. They posted a letter on Facebook last week. It says the Department of Interior did properly consult with us in a very professional and timely manner. I understand the report was completed ahead of the April 23rd deadline and was sent to the White House for review. I do not know when it will be made public. So I guess the deadline was met according to that in this case, but there doesn't appear to be a date for when anyone will actually see the report, anyone like us here in the public. Here's another executive order deadline that has come and gone, establishing that sovereign wealth fund for the United States. You remember this? Lots of countries have these. We did an in-depth on it. It lets the government invest public money, growing it over time and then using that in some specified ways. The deadline for the plan was May 3rd. Well, as of May 15th, the Treasury and Commerce Department submitted a plan to the White House, but a spokesperson said no final decisions have been made. Okay, so this one came a few days late, but technically the order didn't say they needed to create the fund by May 3rd. They just had to submit a plan. Another deadline for an important executive order is actually tomorrow. In February, President Trump called for a plan to lower the cost of IVF. This is the treatment that helps families struggling to conceive to have a baby. We checked to see if there's been any movement on this. A bill we know was introduced in the House in March, but it's also still in committee. A bunch of other executive orders that we've talked about have deadlines that are still months away, like plans to expand the timber industry. That's due August 28th. A report on fair ticket prices. That's due September 27th. DOGE needs to have a full report on its actions by October 9th. And recommendations on how to change FEMA are due by November 16th. All of this to say, executive orders are often thought of as the president, waving his scepter, issuing commands by royal decree. But that's not really how it works, is it? Executive orders, their deadlines, their powers, they can be a little bit flimsy. A new president can come in and revoke previous orders. Congress can reverse them. Federal courts can block them. We have seen this happen countless times. The deadlines on executive orders don't always stick, and oftentimes neither do the orders themselves. That said, we will be watching and keeping track. Make sure you know which ones have the lasting impact. Let's send it over to Kat.